In the heart of the segregated South, a tragedy unfolded that would leave an indelible mark on American history.
This particular day, I went to the beauty parlor with my brother Charles. And my sister Amy stayed home with George. And when we came back, we met her on the road, and she said that George had been taken away. Taken away by who? Some men came in the car and took him away. And that was the last. I never saw him again.
This is the story of George Stinney Jr., the youngest person to be executed in the United States in the 20th century. It was 1944 in Elkolu, South Carolina, a divided town where black and white families lived in starkly different realities. At just 14 years old, George Stinney Jr. lived a modest life with his family in the black community. Like most kids his age, George was curious, kind, and full of potential, but the color of his skin in Jim Crow America would seal his fate. On March 23, 1944, two young white girls, Betty June Binnicker, 11, and Mary Emma Thames, 8, went missing after setting out on their bicycles. The next day, their bodies were discovered in a ditch, brutally beaten. Almost immediately, suspicion fell on George Stinney Jr. He and his sister had seen the girls earlier that day, making George an easy target in a town already gripped by racial prejudice. Without any evidence, George was taken into custody. George's interrogation was conducted without an attorney, without his parents, and reportedly lasted hours. What followed was a confession, allegedly coerced, that George had murdered the girls. No written or signed statement from George exists to this day. His trial was a farce. It lasted just one day. George's court-appointed attorney, inexperienced in capital cases, failed to mount a defense. A jury of 12 white men took only 10 minutes to find him guilty and sentence him to death by electrocution. On June 16, 1944, just 83 days after his arrest, George Stinney Jr. was executed in the electric chair. At 5 feet, 1 inch tall, and weighing just 95 pounds, George was too small that the adult-sized chair overwhelmed him. He had to sit on a Bible for the electrodes to reach his head. For decades, George's case symbolized the deep injustices of America's racial history. Then in 2014, 70 years after his execution, a South Carolina judge vacated George Stinney's conviction, citing the glaring lack of due process and evidence. It was too late for George, but it was a small step toward acknowledging the injustice he endured. George's story reminds us of the importance of fairness, justice, and the devastating consequences of prejudice. As we look back, we must learn from this dark chapter in history to ensure no child, no person, ever faces such a fate again.